Hi, kindergartners. We've been talking all about what good readers do. I've read a lot of books to you, and we've talked about looking at the pictures, looking at the title, reading from left to right, and all these things that you'll be doing as a good reader. But did you know that you are the one that should be choosing the books that you want to read? Sometimes I'll give a book to you and I'll say, I'd like you to read this. But most of the time, you'll be choosing the books that you want to read. We've been getting to know ourselves as readers so that we can make good book choices during our reading time. Today, I want to teach you how readers choose books by reading the cover, looking at the pictures, and predicting what might be inside, and thinking, would this book interest me? So that you can spend your time reading wisely. So, when you go into your classroom library at school or into the school library, you're going to think about, how am I going to pick a book? P-I-C-K, pick. I have a little sign to help my students remember. When you pick a book, you want to have a purpose for reading it. P. Why are you going to read it? Are you going to read it for fun? Are you going to read it because it's a scary story? Are you going to read it because it's sad? Are you going to read it because it's going to tell you something new about information or animals? Interest is the I. You should pick a book that you are interested in. If you pick a book up and you're not interested in reading it, you're not going to enjoy reading it. The C stands for comprehend. That's a big word, but I want you to know all that means is, do I understand this book? So if you're looking at a book and you're reading it and you're trying to figure it out and you're not understanding, that's not a good book for you. Put it away, get a different one. And the K stands for know. Did you know that this word know starts with K? Kind of silly, but K stands for know. Do I know most of the words? Now, in kindergarten, you're not going to know most of the words, and that's okay. But can you tell what's happening in the story by using other ways to read? There are 3 ways to read a book. Did you know that? You don't only have to read the words to read a book. You can do other things too. So in kindergarten, when you are not reading the words yet, there are other ways to read a book. The 3 ways to read a book. Read the pictures. Number 1, children's books are filled with pictures and they tell you so much about the story that you could read the whole book and understand it just by looking at each picture carefully. Number 2, you can read the words when you're ready because that is where the story is told in the words. But if you can't read the words, maybe you can choose a book that you know very well and you can retell the story by turning the pages and making up the words that you remember because it's a familiar story to you. So today, let's take a look at some books and let's figure out, how are you going to choose a book when you are back in school or when you're at the library? Remember this story, Wild About Books? The animals in this book choose books that they are interested in. So let's take a look and see what kind of books they're choosing. All right. Remember this story? There was like a library van and she drove it over to the zoo and all the animals came running because they were so excited to pick books. So here are the books that the giraffes picked. Check out this one. It says basketball. What do you think giraffes and basketball players have in common? They're both tall. Yes. So I think the giraffe is interested in reading this book and they chose it because they have something in common. Basketball players are tall, just like a giraffe. What about this giraffe? What book did he choose? A book about skyscrapers, tall buildings. So once again, the giraffe is interested in reading books about tall things. This one you can kind of tell in the middle is about tall trees. Now let's take a look at some other animals and what kind of books they are choosing to read. These are called laughing hyenas. They don't really laugh, but their bark sounds kind of funny, like they're laughing. So what kind of book is he choosing to read? Well, it says, why did the chicken cross the road? Knock, knock, who's there? It looks like the hyenas chose to read joke books, and I see one of them is just laughing hysterically. So they chose to read books that are funny because they're funny animals. The ants are choosing Wizard of Oz. Maybe they see something familiar inside. The red ruby is red like they are. Oh, this snake is reading Crichter. It's a book about a snake. So a lot of times you'll choose books that remind you of something that you already know about. Look at the bears are reading A Teddy Bear Picnic. The penguins are reading all about ice and writing. So this story, Mud in My Blood, hippos love mud. So even though the story isn't about why they're choosing the books, the pictures told us a lot more about the story than even the words did. So let's go to my classroom library and see how you would choose a book. Now, most teachers will organize their libraries in a way that will help you choose what kind of book you want to read or a book that is just right for you. So let's go to my library and see, what would you choose? Welcome to my library. I have not labeled a lot of my baskets yet, and that's on purpose. I'm going to have my students help me label them so that they can learn where my books go. I do have them organized by fiction, which means they are stories with pretend characters and pretend things happening. They're not real stories. And I also have books organized by favorite author. You'll see Mo Willems books here and David Shannon books down at the bottom. And then there's more authors to meet this year. And I also have a whole shelf of nonfiction. Nonfiction books are books that you will read to learn something. These are not stories with fake people and fake events happening. They are true. So that will help you pick a book. I also have some books that I organized by reading level so that you can say, oh, I know if I choose a book from the red dot basket or the green dot basket, that these are books that are good for me because I can probably read some of the words. So let's take a look at some of the books that I chose that I might be interested in reading today. Which of these books would you choose if I said, why don't you pick 3 and bring them to your seat? What you're going to do is pick it up and look at the cover. Read the title, read the author, and then take a look inside and say, wait, Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss. Oh, I remember this story. Mom and Dad read it to me. So this would be a good book for me to bring back to my seat. I can't read all the words yet, but I remember the story. That's Sam, and he likes to say, I do not like green eggs and ham, remember? And then he talks about, I don't want to eat them in a box with a fox. And I don't want, oh, and then in the end, he changes his mind, remember? He does like green eggs and ham. He just wants to try them first. So maybe you'll take that book back to your seat. Let's see, night animals. I'm a little bit scared of night animals, so I'm not going to pick that one. This is a search and find book about Star Wars. And you know what? Star Wars is not my favorite. Maybe it's yours, but I wouldn't choose that book. Oh, I would probably choose this book because this is by one of my favorite authors, Mo Willems. And I remember the pigeon is one of my favorite characters. I also know that if a book has this symbol on it, that means it's an award-winning book and it's probably going to be good. So I'll put that one in my pile. So far I have 2 books, Green Eggs and Ham and Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. All right, let's take a look at this one. Skippy John Jones. Oh, I've read that one so many times. I don't want to read it again. David Goes to School. Oh, another favorite author. But that's another book I've read a lot. So maybe I'll choose a different one. Here's a book about quarters. Well, I'm not super interested in money, so that would not be something that would interest me. How about, oh, this one's about football? Well, I think that my husband would love this book and my boys might, but football doesn't really interest me. So that would not be a good book for me to choose. Curious George Goes Camping. Oh, I do love camping, and I do think Curious George is a funny guy. But let's see, I have one more book to choose from. And oh boy, yes, tigers. They're my favorite animal. I would love to read this book to learn more about tigers. So these are the 3 books that I would choose to take back to my seat. So when you get to school, or if you're at home with mom and dad, I want you to start figuring out what books you would choose to read and why. You are the one that is in charge of the books you want to read. Sometimes you will read books that I ask you to read or that parents ask you to read, but reading should be something that you enjoy. And if you're going to choose a book, remember to use the letters from IPICK. Pick books that you want to read for a purpose. Know why you're reading it. Are you learning something, or are you just being entertained? Does it interest you? Well, I didn't choose some of the books on my table because they just didn't interest me. Comprehend. Do you understand what's going on in this book, or is it maybe a little bit too hard for you? There are definitely some books out there that I would not choose because I wouldn't understand them. That's not fun to read. And know, do you know most of the words in the book? Or are you able to use the pictures to help you read this story? If you don't know what's going on, it's also not a good book for you. And remember that in kindergarten, you can read a book without reading the words. You can read the pictures, you can read the words, and you can retell the story. So boys and girls, I can't wait to see the books that you choose to put in your basket. And I want you to tell me all about them.